We're back, baby. It's the Daily Stripe Tuesday, July 25th, 2023. Wild set of news to wake up to this morning, kind of all across the board. We're anticipating baseball being very hectic this upcoming weekend with the MLB trade deadline culminating on Sunday. But today, on Tuesday, Saquon agrees to an adjusted franchise tag. Jaylen Brown agrees to his record-breaking max contract, making him the highest-paid player in league history. Harbaugh is suspended for 4 games. Possibly they're working that out. And probably the worst news: Bronny James went into cardiac arrest at the USC practice yesterday and is in the ICU, but is in stable condition. And we'll start with the bad, I guess. Look, you hope for the speediest recoveries and that he gets his health back first and foremost, and then he makes his way back to the court. But it really is, from our fans' perspective, and that's what we are in regards to him. We're fans of LeBron James, and there's been so much talk over the last 3 years of them teaming up, the anticipation of Bronny James. We've watched his game grow. We've watched how hard he's worked in the high school ranks. People said he was undersized. People said he wouldn't live up to the hype. We got to see him live toss when he was a freshman. And he's since grown his game from his freshman year to his senior year. And he's a really tenacious player, really aggressive on both ends of the floor. And despite not having the physical gifts of his father, size and athleticism, he plays, whistle to whistle with absolute grit and is continuing to grow as a shot maker, a playmaker, aggressive to the basket, and is a really good on-ball defender as a guard. And, you really want to see him be able to get back to the court and play for the USC Trojans, not only because it's exciting for the possibilities of him to go to the NBA, but to play with his father, but for his own career. Because he could actually really do some damage with the USC Trojans this year. And there could be a real contender in the Pac-12, which is a strong conference in their last year there before they head to the Big Ten. And they can be contenders in March Madness. And while you want to see these two team up, you really want to see it for his legacy. But first and foremost, his health is most important. And this is a family that's been in the limelight for years, decades, and has done a really good job by and large of being in the limelight. You just wish him a speedy recovery and you hope he's okay and can work his way back. But it was really heartbreaking to see a kid that we grew up with and have known, through the lenses of the camera forever, get hurt like that.
Yeah. I think that it was nice to see, LeBron and his wife already extend their appreciation and thanks for the USC medical staff who was able to act really, really quickly. Sudden cardiac arrest. It's not a heart attack, but it is when the heart suddenly stops beating, and this is something that we've seen more and more frequently, especially in basketball. I was looking up some statistics, and this is off of Twitter, which I guess has now been rebranded to X, from a handle at Glenn Pyle. That's Pyle. Just clarifying some of the kind of statistics around sudden cardiac arrest, that athletes are 3 times more likely to have it than the general population, and basketball players have the highest risk. And it's unfortunate. But that is kind of one of the risks that you take when you play a sport professionally, or you attempt to play a sport professionally. You played at a high level, at a collegiate level, like Bronny James is doing. We all know, and I think oftentimes we talk about it, but we don't necessarily think about it, how rigorous the training is that goes on for all of these athletes to be at their peak performance on the court or on the field. And it puts a lot of stress on your body, even just going to practice every day, even just, going to a lift session every day. And so we just, hope that he has a speedy recovery. We want to see him back out on the court doing what he loves, if that's in the cards. And we've, seen a lot of guys bounce back, and, Hamlin is at camp, which is really, really cool. And, that's something that that just absolutely took the world by storm, brought a lot of people together in coming and supporting for him, his family, and just like sports health in general. So yeah, all the best to Bronny, but it's a tough thing. It's a tough situation to have to deal with for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that, I was just going through the list of players that have, like you were looking at earlier, Alex, on the new branded X, the players that have had heart attacks or gone into cardiac arrest during their time. And, Reggie Lewis for the Celtics died. Obviously, Len Bias is a bit more drug related with the Celtics as well. But there are a list. Hank Gathers famously collapsed on the court. And, we saw Fab Melo unfortunately pass a couple years ago. And like you're saying, and it's not surprising to me that these basketball players are more susceptible to it, while the football players are more susceptible to other injuries because of the contact of the sport, the constant cardio of these guys, the size of them, they're so big to get their hearts pumping at that volume throughout their massive bodies. Even Bronny James, who is quote unquote smaller, is still 6'3". He's still a very big dude. And so for him to be constantly moving like that, like these 7-footers, their hearts to be pumping like that, I think it's an unfortunate need. But Dr. Chow, I think we may have to touch base with him this week. We'll hit Edub up and touch base with Dr. Chow, hopefully, because it's very scary. But the best thing is that we know how well LeBron takes care of his body and how smart he is medically. And how in tune he is with, again, like just the human body in general and training. And we know, like, obviously they have good financial stability to get him the best care and the best studies and put him in the best position. And USC, congrats to them. Like we saw, like you said, with DeMar Hamlin, like how fast the medical staff acted for the Bills and the Bengals helping out. So, I remember as a kid, there was a kid a year younger, than I was when I was in 5th grade. He was in 4th grade. He at practice in Little League was rounding the bases and he gets to the home plate and has a heart attack and dies. And his dad was a coach, terrible. But their family banded together, and what they did was they created a run, a 5K every year, every May, and they put defibrillators at every field in the district.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah. And obviously we saw in the second round this year, Keontae Johnson get drafted. We know what happened to him on the court at Florida, and then he transferred to Kansas State. And obviously, we watch a lot of Big 12 basketball. We got the chance to watch him be really, really impactful for that Wildcat team this past season. And now
wish it was our team. He kicked our ass.
Yeah. And now he's headed to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So, there's going to be a journey in Bronny's recovery, but there's absolutely still a promising future for this young man, and we're wishing him the best. Like you said, Josh, at the beginning of the show, it was the one thing that happened this morning in the sports world with a ton of news that was gave us all a really just a bit of a bummer of an outlook. But there are other things that were positive for these athletes, and a lot of them got paid. Specifically, which one you want to start with? You want to start with Saquon? You want to start with Jaylen Brown?
Let's start with Saquon. We could go back to basketball. Go with Saquon Barkley. I think it was pretty interesting to hear, obviously, Carl Banks and some of the older, veteran, more seasoned players who maybe in their careers, the franchise tag or the annual average salary wasn't $11 million, was somewhere in the range of $1 to $2-3 million. So it's interesting to hear some of these guys come out and be like, take the money, my friend. And I think looking back at the whole dispute, obviously you want the athletes to get paid and compensated fairly. And I think, Nick, you had brought up maybe the last time we talked about it, how impactful he was for the city and how much money he brings in for the city in fantasy and what the Saquon name has done for the New York Giants. But inversely, like, this was his first, year and a half really healthy. Like, he's had major injuries. And if you're running a business and a player, you're not fully confident in their injury history, it's not like they picked up his 5th-year option. It's not like the Raiders picked up Josh Jacobs' 5th-year option. Like, Josh Jacobs was on his last stint before the Raiders were like, dude, we're not going to bring you back. Like, you're not living up to the hype of a first round pick of what we thought you could be as a rookie. So I get both sides, but I think ultimately at the end of the day, with the Giants now, they're agreeing to an $11 million adjusted franchise tag. I think that was a smart move for Saquon Barkley. And look, if he's healthy and he balls out, he'll get a good contract, whether it's with the Giants or not. But ultimately, you got to take the money and run sometimes, especially when you've had these injury histories. Like, and not be, greedy is the wrong word, but not be too choosy and picky with the contracts you're being presented.
I guess it's kind of just like a head scratcher that this is what got it done for him, because it's less than $1 million more than what his franchise tag initially was. Initially, it was 10.091 million, and as we know, this is a 1 year, $11 million deal. So, in the grand scheme of things, it's about $1 million extra. Which, look, I would take that. Yeah, it's great, but I think like the argument that's to be made for a lot of these running backs is they want long-term deals. They don't want to just be playing on 1 year deals because, God forbid, he goes down again, right? And of course, you don't ever want to see that happen. And, especially he doesn't want that to happen. But if that does happen, there's a little bit of security that he's on the roster the next season,
Yeah.
And with football contracts, they don't guarantee the entire contract if they don't want to. If they really wanted to, they can be $0 guaranteed. And I doubt that would ever happen these days because no one would agree to that. But in this situation, I think he wants something that's more long-term. And I just don't know why that this is the deal that they came to the conclusion was, all right, fine, we'll make it work.
Yeah, well, I think a couple of wrinkles in the actual details of the agreement that I'll throw in there. $2 million of it, he's getting via signing bonus. So that is not play-based pay, meaning that he's getting that $2 million right off the bat. He doesn't have to miss camp now. And if you're thinking about a guy who obviously knows his body really, really well, he needs the camp, right? He needs the camp. He needs the preseason work to get in the rhythm, to get in the full swing of, padded play so that he's ready to play an entire season or close to an entire season. And then I think actually it's not even 11 mil guaranteed. 900K of it is based in incentives. So I don't know exactly what those incentives are, but there's no guarantee that he'll end up making more than the 10.1 or 10.09 million that he originally was going to get from the franchise tag. And one really interesting thing is that the New York Giants can franchise tag him next year. That is not off the table. So next year, we could be in the exact same position, or if he has another good season, I guess the Giants entertain a quote unquote long-term contract. But what we've seen from them in this offseason, I wouldn't expect that, or he tests the market. But at that point, I believe he'll be 27 years old. So obviously that'll have, different implications as well, but I'm glad he's staying in New York. I think Carl's ultimate point to me resonated the most was you are the most valuable you can be in New York, whether or not they're paying you 10.1 million, 9 million, 12 million, 13 million. You are the face of the New York Giants football team right now. You are one of the 3 most marketable athletes in the city of New York, which is the biggest sports market in the United States, alongside Aaron Judge and now Aaron Rodgers. And you can find the money elsewhere. If your team is smart and they're savvy, they will bring the deals off the field that will ultimately make you, the most profitable brand that you can be. And you get to play for a competitive football team, which I think Saquon Barkley likes doing that. He likes knowing that this team could get back to the playoffs and maybe do a little bit more damage. So I think what needed to happen happened. And I know it wasn't that much more of an incentive for him to get the deal done, but I think he's just a guy that likes to be out there and he loves the game of football. Now, what happens is that it's the same situation with Josh Jacobs because he's in the exact same position that Saquon Barkley was in.
I think if you're a running back and you're looking to be on a competitive team and you want to win a Super Bowl or you want to be at least a contender, make the playoffs, you have to put the money aside, because we look at the track history and the records of basically any team that's won a Super Bowl over the past 20 years. And for the most part, by and large, there's not a guy who is their starting running back that has a contract that's over like $1 or $2 million. It's always a guy who's either, a sub 1 million guy, a guy that's picked up really, last minute, a guy that's, maybe a late round drafted guy. It's just not the model. And a lot of it's because you have a lot of money locked up into the quarterback and the defensive pieces and your wide receivers and your linemen. So, if he wants to stay on a competitive team, he might have to take a pay cut. I don't necessarily see the Chiefs breaking the bank for him. I don't see the Bills doing that. I don't see the Chargers doing that. I don't see really anyone doing that.
Yeah, I mean, for Jacobs as well, like, I don't think he's as dynamic as Saquon is. He was still picked in the first round, but he wasn't the second overall pick like Saquon Barkley was, taken over ahead of like guys like Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. Also, he's from New York. Like he's literally a hometown kid. And how often do you see that happen? It's pretty rare. So to me, I think him staying makes more sense than Josh Jacobs now with the ball in his court. Obviously you want the deal and you hope that you can replicate what you did last season. And also, if you want to win, I don't know if the Raiders are the right spot for you. I think that's time for him to, if he wants to get that championship, maybe it's time for him to move on.
If that's important to him.
If it is, I think long-term, longevity of a contract is most important to these guys.
I would agree. And I think that, while Vegas is an exciting new market for football, and obviously there's a lot of money there with with the gambling industry and just the entertainment industry, it's not the same situation from a marketability standpoint in comparison to Saquon Barkley being in the city of New York and playing for the Giants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. All right, let's talk Jaylen Brown. Jaylen.
Money.
A lot of money. I don't know if this makes Jaylen Brown a Celtic for life. And I think we've discussed that before. I think that there's a world in which Jaylen Brown, Jaylen Brown could, if he's not loving Boston still, which I don't think he's obsessed with Boston. I think everyone knows that. I think it's a pretty apparent thing around the NBA and around basketball heads that he's not in love with Boston, and some of their fans. But again, like sometimes the money is too tough to turn around, and you are contending for a title. But I don't think this deal, with the way we see deals go, like it won't be long before somebody surpasses him, and in 4 or 5 years, he'll go from the richest paid player in NBA history to the 10th, and then he'll go to the 15th, and then it'll go down the line. Like that's how the game works. The cap is constantly growing. Players are constantly getting paid more. And look, he's an all-star level player. He's a guy. Yes, his shortcomings in his game with his left hand going to the rack were a glaring issue and under the microscope for a majority of this past playoff. But like Jaylen Brown, by and large, has grown his game every year. He's gotten better every year. He's an all-star almost every year, and he's a guy who I don't know if he had his own team, maybe a true playoff contender, but he's a true top 25 player in the league. And you don't get much number two. You don't get a much better number two to Jason Tatum than you do to Jaylen Brown, a guy who in his own right is capable of going for 40 points a night and a clean, efficient 40 points a night. So I think, look, it's the deal the Celtics had to make. And I think it also, despite the money, if both parties aren't satisfied with where things are at, we've seen this guy in trade rumors for years now, they can still move on from him in a year or two. But, this is a very positive and hopeful move that this Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Horford, KP, Rob Will, Brogdon, when he's healthy, team can work and get it done and get past the Bucks, get past the Sixers once again. Hopefully get past the Heat. Miami's 2-1 against them now in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they have the edge there. And they almost beat them, 2 years ago. That was a close series. So hopefully the Celtics can finally get past that, get back to the finals, and whoever they meet, whether it be the Nuggets, the Lakers, which would be fun, and they really revamped quite nicely, like we discussed. Hopefully they get back there and get it done with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. But I think it's a really good contract. Very exciting for the Boston fan base. And now you have both these guys, at least for the next 2 years, I would say, cemented in there. And there's no more questions around, oh, we're going to move him for Dame. Oh, we're going to move him for this guy. The moves have been made. You have Porzingis, and this is the team we're riding out with Missoula and a revamped coaching staff as well.
So you do like the contract. So just, I don't even think we said the number, but it's 5 years, 304 million. So in the 5th year of his contract, which there is no player option. So that's a more team friendly deal, because then they have the ability, with how young he is, pending his health at that point, that he, they could move him if they wanted to. Keeping him obviously is of value to the Celtics in that 5th year, where he will be presumably paid $70 million, which is a lot of money. I agree on your 2-year window, Josh. I think that's what the Celtics are looking at. And then I think past that, things get very dicey for this team. Just based off of how the new CBA is going to impact teams, I would predict that in 3 years from now, and then a 2-year window from there, so from 3 to 5 years from now, there's going to be a massive opportunity for a team with their best player, their superstar, a team like the San Antonio Spurs, who has a superstar on a rookie deal, to win the NBA championship. Because what is going to happen, this is not just going to be the case for the Boston Celtics, but many other teams, where they're going to have 2 stars that they are paying an ungodly amount of money to, and they will not be able to put enough pieces around and build some sort of roster that's actually at a championship contending level, because they won't have the depth. This is something that we saw with the Suns last year. This is something that I'm very interested in watching for the Suns this coming year. Jaylen Brown is making more money on his Supermax than Nikola Jokic, who's the best player in the world. It's just one of those things where you kind of had to
Bradley
do it.
Beal vibes. You have to do it. I'm not like, look, I love JB. I'm not disappointed. If there was a guy I really didn't want to pay, I'd be bummed. Am I 10 out of 10 over the moon? Like, this is the best deal I've ever seen? Absolutely not. But again, the best deal I ever saw was Carl Crawford, and that was a disaster. So at this point, I just got to wait and see.
I don't know about this. I mean,
bad vibe. I could tell by your face you think it's bad vibes.
He's making more money than Barbie and Oppenheimer grossed in their opening weekend.
Too much money.
It's ridiculous. 5 years for $300 million. For a while, we were in baseball thinking, wow, a 10-year, $300 million deal is a lot of money. And that's a 10-year, $300 million deal. This is a 5-year deal. It's pretty ridiculous, the amount of money that's getting thrown around these days. I mean, it's just sets a precedent, in my opinion. Now, what is Jokic gonna get when his time is to renew his contract or hit free agency? What is Giannis gonna get? What is Luka gonna get? Are they gonna get $500 million deals? I think it's $600 million deals. It's Jaylen Brown. Come on, it's not a top 10 player in the league.
Barely a top 25.
Over the next 5 years, actually over the course of 7 years, Luka for 4, Kyrie for 3, they will be making less than Jaylen Brown is making in 5 years by $35 million. So it is something that the Celtics don't have to worry about right now, but you better make sure that in one of the next 2 years, you win the title. You have to.
If you win the title, it's fine. That's it. Look, you've won one. You're the Boston Celtics, one of the most historic franchises. And I say the same thing for the Braves, for example. Yes, the Braves have won this century. They've won in the last 23 years, but they've won 18 division titles. You have to get it done after a certain point. The Celtics, you're constantly getting there. You're constantly
at what point do we not care about the division titles? We're at that place with the Celtics for the last title. No, I'm saying for the last 3 years, the Celtics have been an NBA champion contender. When you do that for 5 years in a row and you don't get any, if that happens, then it's a massive failure. And you took the swing and you miss, and whatever the recipe that you put on paper didn't end up with a 5-star meal at the end. It's just going to be really, really interesting to see. And the bummer about these massive Supermax deals is if a guy goes down, which we don't want to happen, but guys get injured, things happen in the NBA. You don't really have a contingency plan. If Jaylen Brown is not playing for this team in the playoffs, or Tatum is not playing for this team, you're not winning the title. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, look what happened to Milwaukee in the first round. They lost Giannis for 2 games. They got bounced. They got beat by the very, very capable team. Obviously, they ended up going to the finals, but it makes a difference when you don't have one of your best players. And when you tie up that much money in 2 guys, it makes it very, very difficult to have the surrounding pieces be guys that can step up. So it's just one of those things where it's like, it had to be done. Maybe a little bit, Captain Hindsight, you're like, he shot 33.5% from 3. Should he have been second team All NBA? Maybe he shouldn't have been. And you could have saved whatever amount of millions of dollars. But he played that well. He deserves the Supermax per the current CBA. That's what the rules are right now. But you lost Grant Williams. We'll see how that affects y'all on the defensive side from a versatility standpoint. Like Jaylen Brown, if he continues to get better, like you said, and he has done year in, year out, and he builds that handle with his left hand, and he is able to create off the dribble and play make for others in a better capacity than he has in past, which I'm hesitant to say that he's definitely going to get there, but I think the shooting splits can get a lot better. He needs to be better from 3. He has to be a 36.5% shooter from 3 or higher, which he's done before in his career. And I think he can get back to that. But the added volume this past season that got him to the 26.5 points per game, his efficiency suffered because of that. So it's something that I'm going to be looking at. And obviously you're under a microscope until the next round of Supermaxes, which next year Jason Tatum will be eligible. He will sign a bigger deal, like you're saying, than Jaylen Brown does. Rightly so. He's a top 7, 8 basketball player on the planet.
And they'll have probably $700 million committed to 2 guys. That's ridiculous.
It's what the Wizards did it with Beal and Wall, and it flopped. Like that ended up not working out for them. Yeah, it's very scary. And am I happy I have Jaylen Brown? Yes. Do I love Jaylen Brown? Yes. But all those reasons you just listed like 6, 7 ifs about a guy that we just paid $300 million to. Like,
what was the contract for for John Wall and Bradley Beal when that was? It was like 200, right?
230.
Yeah, I mean, I think Beal ended his deal.
John Wall was 170.
47 mil or something like that was
the
last year.
John Wall was 170. This is a lot different.
Yeah, but like at the time it was the biggest deal. Yes, it's a lot different. But at the time that was the biggest deal. Right now, this is the biggest deal. It just giving those vibes. Like, he's not a top 10 player, and I know guys will supplant them and take his place, but we see this in sports too. Like, windows. When the superstars start commanding the massive money, you can't pay the guys around him. And that's why, going back to the Saquon and the running back thing, like, there's only a certain amount of time, like the Giants have that window, right? And do you want look, the Cowboys just locked up so much money in Zeke a couple years ago, and then they spent the next 3-4 years like, why did we do that? Locked up the money in the wrong guy. You want to pay your quarterback, obviously, the guys who could protect him, and then you want to pay the guys who can get the other team's quarterback and make it hard for them. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's who you pay.
When was the last time in any sport that a franchise is like, damn, we're glad we gave him that massive contract that is hundreds of millions of dollars?
I would say the only guy, not the only guy, NBA is a little different, but I would go to the baseball. The only guy that is coming to the top of my mind that's like been successful so far is Garrett Cole. Like, that's the only contract I'm like, all right, this is like working out. The Yankees haven't won anything because everything else has been a disaster. I'm Aaron Judge in his first year of his new massive deal has played half the season.
Giancarlo, awful. Trout's been bad because he's been hurt. I mean, you look at who else?
Cano.
Cano was terrible. I mean, Harper has been fine, but like, he's been hurt twice already in his big deal.
You have an MVP in a World Series appearance, but yes, agreed. I mean, you go through like Bogart's bad start, Machado, like his worst year yet. And then you go
to the more team-friendly Acuna deal, and guess what? He's been pretty fantastic. Like,
yeah, I mean, the Braves though, like, that's like why they won the World Series. That's why they are back to where they are, because they have enough money to sprinkle around and they're deep. I mean, yes, of course, Acuna is the MVP right now on a really cheap deal, but like, that goes to show you that they could also pay Austin Riley. They could also pay Ozzie Albies. They could also pay, their starting pitchers. They could also, get Sean Murphy and give him a new contract. Like, this team is built for the future too, not just for right now, because they've done smart deals.
Yeah,
You pay your
I'd
best
say
player.
I'd throw Freddie and Mookie have been good deals.
I was about to say, we'll see what Devers happens. It's a pretty new deal, as far as like a massive contract. And then DeGrom, I know it's shorter term, but that's been that's by and large, you could chalk that up as a disaster.
Yep.
Scherzer, Verlander deals have been a disaster. Lindor, not great. I
But
mean,
the kicker is
Yelich, like kind of mid.
the kicker is there's no cap in baseball. So it's like it's not as big of a deal. It is a big deal, obviously, if you flop on one of these deals, but it's not as big of a deal if you flop in comparison to when you do it in the NBA and the NFL. You can't come back from that.
Right.
The NBA is like the NFL is, in my opinion, the hardest.
And yeah, in baseball, it's like, you're only as good as how much your owner wants to spend. It's like if he wants to pull out of his bank account, then he'll do it. I mean, it's like the richest owner basically gets what he wants. But yeah, in NFL, you got the salary cap. You have to manipulate everything. Cutting a lot of corners, going cheap at certain positions, and we're going to talk about running back right now. Like it's partially why, it's probably the biggest reason why, honestly. And when quarterbacks get massive contracts, like it doesn't really allow them to pay the rest of the team the right amount and spread the wealth and get depth.
Yeah. No, 100%. Like and we've seen it so many times. The NFL, like you have to pay 50 something guys, 53 guys
more.
You have to pay practice squad. And then you have 11 guys who are integral every play, no plays off, starting, and then not to mention the rotation guys. So there are dudes like every dollar counts. Like look at Bill, like he's like the biggest penny pincher in some regards. Like he'll cut guys. He didn't bring back JC Jackson. He's like, I'd rather go get a rookie or two and try to replace JC Jackson that way than play a guy that was playing at a Pro Bowl level, a corner for me. And you see it time and time again in the NFL. There's so many, like AJ Brown was traded. AJ Brown, a guy who were like, yeah, top 10 receiver. The Titans are like, I'm not paying this guy. I'd rather take a shot at a rookie. And now they end up paying DeAndre Hopkins. So, who's and AJ Brown goes to the Super Bowl. So who's laughing now over in Tennessee? But like, that's like the kind of corners that are being cut all the time. And we talk about the running backs, but like the receivers were like the Chiefs. Tyreek Hill is a top 3 receiver. We're saying a guy that could be in the Hall of Fame. And the Chiefs are like, dude, thanks for the Super Bowl, but we are not paying you. We're not paying you. We'll take the draft capital from the Dolphins and we'll take defensive linemen. That's what they did. They took defensive players.
Tyreek Hill is definitely a really unique situation in my opinion, because it's just like what his intangibles are, like fastest receiver in the league, home run threat. He's ridiculous. There's not many people that you can, replace him with. He's not, replicatable. But I think for the most part, when you have a receiver that's super talented, there's so many receivers out there in the NFL that can play, especially in the system that the Chiefs have, right? Where they can put up numbers. And as long as Patrick Mahomes stays healthy, you can get them the ball, they're going to have success, especially in Andy Reid's offense. So why not take the money you would have paid Tyreek Hill and spread the wealth and just build your depth everywhere else, right? You want one guy or do you want 5 guys that can contribute? Because you're talking right now about 11 guys have to contribute on each side of the ball. Right.
For sure. I could not agree with you more. Like that's exactly what you do. But like that's you don't lock up all the money into one dude. Even if he's that good, you cut that corner. Right. And Tyreek Hill, like what's like you don't know what's coming because he's stronger. He runs screens. It's not just like, all right, we're running 4 verts with you every play. But it's pretty much like the Mariano Rivera cut fastball. You know what's coming. You cannot stop it. He's that dynamic and that good and that much of a difference maker. And still the Chiefs are like, all right, like you're saying, I'll take MVS. I'll draft Sky Moore, see how that happens. I'll draft Rice from SMU. We'll bring in Juju Smith-Schuster for a year. Who else do we want to bring in? Kadarius Toney. I know he just unfortunately got hurt and had some surgery, but he'll be back probably to start the season or a little bit after. We'll take a flyer on him for a 3rd round pick. We don't care. We have Patrick Mahomes. We have a really good offensive line. Like, dude, like they're running. They took Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the 1st round. They're like, see you, dude. Isaiah Pacheco, thank you. Just come on in. And guess what? There's no way that if he's not up to snuff, they'll cast him to the side as well. Like, we'll pay the defensive line. And like even Chris Jones wants to be the highest paid player over in Kansas City right now for the defensive line at his position, or top 3. And they're like, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
I think there's also a luxury you have too when you've won multiple Super Bowls, right? Where it's like, we've done this, at this point, we're playing with house money. Yeah, we want to win a Super Bowl every single season, but it's not like chasing that very first Super Bowl where you're trying to get over the hump, right? Like a team like the Chargers, or, a team like the Browns, or a team that's just like, that needs their first one. They're chilling right now. Of course they want to win it, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of deal. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to go out and just drop the bag on someone when we can have this model that's been working for years.
Well, and you also don't have the anxiety and pressure as a head coach, as, the front office, that your owner is going to fire you when you make a mistake, right? Like,
yeah,
that's the thing. Like, if Eric Spoelstra sat Bam Adebayo in the Eastern Conference Finals for 3 games, if he didn't start him and he started Kevin Love, everyone would be like, oh, what does he know that we don't know? They wouldn't be like, fire Eric Spoelstra. They'd be like, this guy's a genius. And Pat Riley would trust him. Like,
yeah.
But that's what you get when you have the pedigree and the accolades of guys of that caliber. And
yeah.
when you're the Cowboys and you're the Chargers and you haven't been there and you haven't earned it, right? Like you always have that little voice in the back of your head that's like, you're messing up. And guess what happens when you mess up? You don't have a job.
It's earned what you're saying right now with Spoelstra and Andy Reid and Tomlin and guys like that who have been with their teams for a long time, that have brought success to their organizations. But it's also earned for guys like Brandon Staley that, make these boneheaded decisions. And look, this has got to be the last year. If it doesn't work out, he's for sure gone. We've been saying it every single season. 3rd time's a charm. I mean it. Like, if they don't make the playoffs, he's got to be out of there, right? And that's just been the story, the moral of the story for the Chargers for the last 30 years. You know what I mean? Longer than that, since they started their organization. I mean, there's not been any stability at that coaching position. And that's earned because what's the old saying? The Chargers are going to find a way to charger it.
Yeah, but I think you could go across the board. I think it's like the Chargers are in that position. Like
right. I'm just using them as an example.
Yeah, but the Jets are in that position too. Like
sure.
If Robert Saleh, you go and you get, first of all, I don't care any other move you've made. The biggest move you've made in the last 5 years was taking Zach Wilson 2nd overall ahead of Justin Fields and ahead of Mac Jones. You can say what you want about Mac Jones.
That wasn't his move, though. That wasn't Saleh's move.
He was the head coach.
Yes, but year 1, that's not his decision, though. Likely.
You're attached to it, though. You're attached to it. Like it's like a part of your tenure. And they've made some really good moves outside of that, like excellent moves, quite frankly. So that's a part of your tenure. You go and you get Aaron Rodgers, and I know it's a very tough division, but if you flop this year with Aaron Rodgers, you flopped with Zach Wilson already, like they're going to make changes. That's just the way the NFL is. And it's less deserved than Brandon Staley's had less of a shot than Brandon Staley, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles with the NFL. Like you could go, even Bill's on the hot seat, people are saying. The only one that's not on the hot seat really is like Harbaugh and Tomlin. Like
and Andy Reid.
Like everyone else, like McDaniels could be fired and after a 2nd season this year if they suck.
I would say that it's because there's just so much talent out there. We all know that. We talk about it all the time, how you can find guys all over the place. And on any given Sunday, I mean, there's literally a movie title, any given Sunday. One team can beat another team. I don't care if you're the, 0-16 Detroit Lions from back in the day, right? Any given Sunday, you can beat a team in the NFL. You're all professionals. If you scheme the right way, all of your guys have career games, it can happen. So I think everyone has such a short leash because expectations are so high in the NFL that, to your point, there's 11 guys on each roster or on each side of the ball. Like there are playmakers on the field, right? It's who's going to show up, for that season. And I legitimately think that, as bad as the Cardinals are going to be this year, they could easily pop off and win 6 games. You know what I mean? We think they're not going to win any games, but like that's partially the reason why, you have such a small window to get it done. It's different in college football. I think that with Texas Longhorns, we've been impatient because, we're so used to greatness for Mac Brown and years prior. It's like a 4-year window every single year with Chuck Strong, then Tom Herman, now Sarkisian. It's different because of recruiting classes, and you have to kind of build that pedigree of getting guys to come to your school. But when you're drafting players in the NFL, especially if you're picking in the first round, really, really high end, top 10, you're getting the cream of the crop. You have Justin as even of a playing field as anyone when it comes to free agency and signing people. There's not like, any disadvantages you have maybe besides your city, but I don't think guys really care that much in the NFL about what city they go to. It's not like the NBA, in my opinion. You see guys that go to Cleveland all the time. Why would you want to go to Cleveland?
Money. Yeah, they take the highest bidder.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of put the cherry on top of the Staley Chargers conversation, the like ultimate point here is that you had Justin Herbert, right? And he's through 3 years of his NFL career, and after his first year, where how many different records did he set as a rookie, and how are we talking about that guy? Like where we were with Justin Herbert after year one. We've cooled off, of course, but the way
not because of him
you're right. Not because of him, not because of the talent. And obviously he dealt with the rib injury this season.
I think it was really hurt last season.
Josh Allen, year 3, he made the AFC Championship game, right? Patrick Mahomes, what had he done in 3 years? What did Joe Burrow done in 3 years? Like, what did Trevor Lawrence do in year 2? All of these guys have gotten further than Herbert at this point. And from a talent standpoint, I think we can all say very plainly that he's the same caliber of the rest of those guys. Maybe Mahomes is a little bit different. And I think the more and more we watch that guy's career, I think the more and more we will feel that way. But that's the most inexcusable thing that Staley, that you would bring as a criticism to Staley, because we're talking about it with basketball. Like, the rookie contract means so much when you have to pay the guy that touches the ball more than anyone else on an NFL field. They're due pay what they're deserved. You get into a really, really tricky position, and that's coming up for Herbert.
Let me ask you guys something, because I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this, but essentially, as fans, we always like to make, judgments on head coaches. That guy should be fired. That guy's not doing a great job. Fire him. That's been thrown around a lot for Staley. It's been thrown around since the beginning of time, with head coaches. I feel like if we can see that this guy is a poor judge of character, or he's got a poor, grasp on the team, he's making bonehead decisions year in, year out. Not just this guy, but any head coach, by and large, I feel like the fans are usually right. The players are for sure right? I mean, we had Chris Harris Jr. on our show a couple weeks ago, and he kind of gave us a little shrug, I don't know about Staley, I mean, that's a guy who played for him. Why is ownership and front office willing to give these guys a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance? Usually the consensus is right. The public is normally right when it comes to something like this. I mean, we all have the same opinion about Mike Tomlin. We all have the same opinion about Nick Saban. I think by and large, we all have the same opinion about Sarkisian, at least. I mean, I think we all see that there's results coming. I mean, we've got some good, we got to see what happens on the field. But as it stands right now, we're all right here. And we've all been calling for Staley's head for years.
I think I want to touch on Harbaugh. We bring up head coaches. He's suspended for the first 4 games, possibly the Michigan season. Not big games, but still an important thing in college football. I think that you don't want to be caught in a position, Nick, of okay, your lease is so short. You have such few time. You don't want to continuously fire guys. You have a year to prove it, 2 years to prove it, because then your head coaching position becomes unattractive to the incoming coaches.
It does, but your head coaching position is attractive because you have Justin Herbert, as we were saying right now. And the longer you keep a guy who's not supposed to be having that role, the longer you push back your window or miss your window, and the more you waste Justin Herbert's time. I mean, let's be honest. If we see another season right now that we're talking about, Staley missing the playoffs or blowing it. I mean, look, they made the playoffs last year, but they blew it in dramatic fashion. If it happens again this season, right? If they come short of the AFC Championship, you've wasted another season and you're back to where you started. And in my opinion, you should have pulled that trigger last year.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think you don't want to be changed. That'd be his 3rd head coach in 4 years.
Right. It's worth noting that there is no, just like there's no perfect play. Just like there's no perfect player. Yeah, just
This is his
win.
second, but if you'd fired Staley, like when we all thought he should be fired, like if you fired him,
this is his fourth season, so it'd be his third head coach in 5 seasons.
okay. So you have 3 head coaches. Like it's a lot. Like you don't want too much. You want to try to maintain. I know, but you want to try to maintain. I don't like. I'm with you. Staley should be fired, but you want to try to maintain continuity.
I kind of feel like they brought in Kellen Moore, yes, to be a great offensive coordinator, but things aren't working out. Maybe that's the guy for the job. Yeah. He's been throwing the mix all over the place for a head coaching position in his, time in the NFL.
But we saw last year that just because you're a good OC doesn't mean that you're going to turn into a good head coach. So this is my like last kind of point on it, is that like there's no perfect player, just like there's no perfect coach. And being a coach is really, really difficult. It's a very challenging job. There's not like we could say that the pool of applicants and candidates is massive, because it is, but qualified applicants and qualified candidates who are actually going to translate into winning football games, that's a different story. And it's a massive risk, like to move on from a guy who's already coached an NFL game to give it to a guy who never has coached an NFL game as a head coach. And you can kind of like grasp at straws a little bit and say like he's been to the playoffs. He at least now knows what that is like. And you would hope that he continues to get better as a coach. He's still a really young guy. Like there's still promise and still hope, I think, that he could turn this season around. And we'll see. Yeah. But if he doesn't, we'll all be there. And Nick, you'll be the first to say, I told you so. And like, yeah.
I'm not going to argue with you. I do want to say one thing on Harbaugh, suspended for the first 4 games. The games he's missing are not big games. But when he returns, he has 2 back-to-back games in the Big Ten play at Nebraska with a new head coach, Matt Rule. I'd assume Michigan would go in and take care of business there. But the second game he comes back for is at Minnesota. And that immediately on my calendar, the Golden Gophers going 9-4 last year, winning 4 of their last 5. That to me, that game on October 7th in Minnesota, Harbaugh's now second game back after being suspended. Trap game of the year for Michigan.
Little upset alert from Josh.
Watch it.
It's a trap game, but are you just make it? Just make the claim, dude. Just say that the Minnesota Golden Gophers are going to win.
PJ Fleck and the Minnesota Golden Gophers are going to now beat Michigan. I thought Michigan would go in there and win that game, but Harbaugh being away from the team for the first 4 games, getting his sea legs back. I think again, this is a Michigan team that should go to the playoffs, can go to the playoffs, but I think now that becomes a very dangerous game for them. And if they lose to the Minnesota Golden Gophers, a team that was very good again in the Big Ten last year, I think it's going to be very dangerous for the Michigan Wolverines heading into that place again. You go watch look at PJ Fleck's Western Michigan speech. Run through a wall for that guy.
Yeah, love a good hot take to close out the show.
Got you guys. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Pac-Man Jones, very exciting stuff. Talking about Bengals again. And we'll get his take on Saquon. He was one of those guys that had a really strong stance on that. So talk more Saquon contract, Bengals, and some defensive backs. See you guys tomorrow. Hit your free throws.